pathway. And this is what most doctors concern themselves with. So we're going to do an MTHFR test on you because that's what a genetic test is. And we haven't even begun to talk about that, have we? But this is the methylation pathway right here. If we looked at a chart, your body takes in folate from foliage, green leafy vegetables, goes through these different genes that we have to look at, and ultimately makes this thing right here, methyl tetrahydrofolate. Who's heard of that? Few people. And methyl tetrahydrofolate then goes into the methionine pathway and makes SAM. That's another life purpose that you have that you might not have known about. And it goes into the biopterin pathway to make all your neurotransmitters. So, So, it's very important. So this folate pathway is really important. Methylation is the process of turning on and off genes to make certain enzymes for the gene to replicate, depending on what that gene does. It has to be methylated and unmethylated in order for that to turn on and off. So making methyl groups is very, very important for your body. If we have a deficiency of methyl tetrahydrofolate because of a dietary deficiency, which did occur at the beginning of the first few decades of the last century, the early 1900s, green leafy vegetables were not what city people were eating. They were eating cakes and breads and things like that, right? And they weren't eating whole wheat bread, they were eating white bread. Well, where do you get folate from? If you have a deficiency in folate, you're going to have a deficiency in methyl tetrahydrofolate, which is the active folate. And one of the things that it can occur if a woman carrying a baby has a deficiency, it could cause a neural tube defect. So women weren't eating any green leafy vegetables if you were a high-class woman. You were eating a lot of breads, and you certainly weren't eating that brown bread. You were eating white bread. There is folate in green leafy vegetables. There's also a little bit of folate in the wheat germ of the hull of the wheat. So when that was stripped off to make white bread, there was no folate in white bread. So people were grossly deficient in folate. So babies were being born with neural tube defects, and when it was discovered that it was folate, they created folate in the laboratory. It's called folic acid. So folic acid is synthetic folate. Now if you look at the back of your vitamin capsule bottle and it says folic acid and it doesn't say anything else, it's synthetic folate. Now it might say folic acid as folate or folic acid as 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate or folic acid as folinate. If it does that, then it's okay. If it just says folic acid and nothing else, or as folic acid, you should take that bottle of vitamins and throw it in the wastebasket. Synthetic folic acid will help prevent neural tube defects, but it is theorized that synthetic folic acid is the cause of the defect that is so pushed on the market, the MTHFR defect. So epigenetically, it's thought that folic acid is the cause of the methyl tetrahydrofolate defect. It doesn't work the same as folate. You should not be taking folic acid. So folate will turn into methyl tetrahydrofolate through this folate cycle. And then it's used in several other metabolic pathways. Still with me? This deep gene right down here, that MTHFR gene down at the bottom there, is so highly regarded because it was one of the first ones discovered, and there's a lot of research on it. There's 2 genes there in that family on that bubble there. The 1298 gene is thought that it mainly feeds the biopterin pathway to make neurotransmitters and neuronal and endothelial nitric oxide. And the C67 gene feeds the methionine cycle to make SAM. which is your main methyl transfer group in your body, to help turn genes on and off and for everything to work. So when I have a patient that comes to me and says, well, I have a homozygous defect on C677 MTHFR, so I'm going to die. You know, no, you're not going to die, okay? And you probably shouldn't be taking a whole mess of imsumide. And this is, I used to do this a long time ago too. So we're going to put the person on, because that used to be the only gene you could test. So we're going to put the person on methyl tetrahydrofolate. Well, the problem is that you push those pathways so rapidly, if they have defects in those other pathways, you can cause a whole mess of symptoms, literally. It could be a catastrophe. If you make too much neurotransmitters, you are going to have problems. In the case of the two children that I mentioned that were patients, if they would have taken, either one of them would have taken, and I don't remember if they were ever on it, would have taken methyl tetrahydrofolate or other methyl groups, they would have pushed dopamine production very strongly. These are the people that can become suicidal very rapidly or detrimental to society very rapidly. Excess dopamine and excess serotonin are going to cause very high levels of aggression. All right? Still with me? All right, so these are the genes in that pathway. We're not going to go over all of them. They're all important. And you see this person has an MTHFR C677, a single allele or heterozygous defect there. All right? So now, making SAM. So if I said ATP, making ATP is one of your life goals, making SAM is another life goal. You need to make SAM. If you don't make SAM, you're going to die. And that's made in this methionine pathway. So, starts right here, coming from MTHFR through this MTR gene. This is where you recycle B12. This is why the form of B12 is really important in what you're taking. We'll talk about that a little bit. You get into methionine here, and this is an amino acid that then converts ultimately to SAM. Methionine is really important for cancer patients because if we have MAT gene defects that converts methionine into SAM, then we can have excess methionine and cancer can feed off of methionine. So this is where, when we talk about cancer diets and what are we going to put this cancer patient on? Oh, well, the Gerson protocol is going to put you on very high leucine and low meats, which is technically similar to a low methionine diet. So the Gerson protocol would probably be very good for a person who has MAT gene defects with excess methionine. But if the person doesn't have MAT gene defects, they don't need to be on a low methionine diet. Follow me? It's kind of confusing, but the more information that you have and the more you know, the more valuable this can be to a patient. Right? And again, maybe for the average person who doesn't really have much wrong with them, this isn't all that important. But when you're dealing with stage 4 cancer patients and Lyme patients that can't get better, all this stuff is super, super important. So looking at these pathways is really important. It's so important for you to make SAM, which I blurred it out on this picture right here because it's behind this little picture, that you make it through multiple pathways. You make it through recycling homocysteine, you make it through recycling choline, you make it through the MTHFR path that has to go through B12, and this is why B12 is so important in your body. But what form of B12 should I use? It depends on what gene defects that you have. So most people that are going to go on B12 just go to the store and say, "Hey, I need some B12," and will buy B12, or go to a practitioner and just go on this B12. It could be cyanocobalamin, which is not a good form of B12. It could be methylcobalamin, that's methyl groups, which you have to be really careful of, because if you push too many methyl groups on a person and they have defects in their biopterin pathway, which we haven't looked at yet, you'll push it really hard and you'll make excess serotonin and excess dopamine. So you can't do that. So then you have to go to what other forms of B12? Adenosylcobalamin? Yeah, that may be a good choice. Hydroxycobalamin? Yeah, that could be a good choice too. So looking at the gene profile helps you to get specific in how you're going to use supplementation for that person. So how are we going to support that gene defect? Well, this is going to be probably the best choice for you to help push this the right way.
Is hydroxy safe for just about anyone?
Hydroxy and adenosine are safe for anyone. Either one of those, I would say, are safe for anyone.
Where do you find those?
On my shelf? That's where I find them. You can buy them. They're readily available. Either one of those are readily available. Hydroxycobalamin and adenosylcobalamin. Yeah, I mean, I maybe not in the normal health food store. I don't know. I haven't shopped there. Yes.
Will methylcobalamin turn mercury stored in your tissues to gas?
Will methylcobalamin turn mercury stored in your tissues to gas?
Mercury vapor.
I've never heard that. I've never seen any research on that. But you do have to be careful with methyl groups because they're going to push different pathways. So I'm not against methylcobalamin. I use it all the time, understand? And we use folate all the time, but you have to be careful looking at the whole big picture of the patient. Okay? And that is a key piece to overusing a supplement too. So if 1,000 micrograms of methylcobalamin is good, that doesn't mean 5,000 is better. That could be a lot worse. And I hate to say it, but these are metabolic pathways. And there's different needs that you have depending on the stress of the day, depending upon what you're going through from an emotional standpoint, physical standpoint. I or no one could say, oh, you need X amount of milligrams or micrograms of this nutrient based upon your genetics, based upon your organic acid test, based upon this. It changes with the wind. Now we do know that this might be a better supplement to take than this, but you have to get a good idea on how much you're supposed to take of that and the balance of that depending on your stress level. Yes? Speaking of mercury, do I have any thoughts on detoxing mercury? He's saying I have 3 minutes left. So yes, I have a lot of thoughts on that. So, but it's a complicated issue. But we should talk about it. But looking at those cytochrome P450 pathways, because that's where mercury's detoxed, is going to show compromise, right? So you want to support those pathways. So there are ways when those, I didn't talk about the detox pathway, to support those pathways. So there are certain products that will push that PON pathway. There are certain products that will push that cytochrome P450 pathway. And you want to support those pathways if you have defects on those pathways. This is where it gets to the gut again, because your liver could be doing a wonderful job and making these things water soluble, dumping them into the kidney, and you have kidney compromise because you have urea cycle defects, which we're going to talk about later, or dumping it into the colon, and because you have such horrible leaky gut, you're reabsorbing it right away again. Or because you're constipated and you're reabsorbing it in your colon, even if you don't have leaky gut. So you have to deal with the gut, at the same time at least. You can't have a person being constipated. This is where coffee enemas can help too. So we put almost all our cancer patients on coffee enemas because that will help pull stuff out of the liver. It'll help the cytochrome P450 pathways, and it'll keep the person from being constipated a little bit too. Okay? We do have to break.